Today, on Independent Wrestling Profiles, we're talking with the Futurist Luke Kaiden. What is your earliest memory of discovering professional wrestling?
So I feel like I kind of knew about it like forever. I obviously knew who like Hulk Hogan was and all these like larger than life wrestlers, but also like as celebrities. So I found like a YouTube clip, and I think this was kind of like when John Cena, like he was kind of like a meme for a couple of years. So I kind of found like I was like, oh, who's John Cena? And then I found like a match clip, and it was him versus Alberto Del Rio from a Monday Night Raw, and I was like, oh, okay, this is interesting. Like he's slamming him around in this ring, and I'm like, this is kind of cool. And then it wasn't for like a little bit. I watched WrestleMania 32, and that was like the first full show I ever watched, and I was like, wow, like this is crazy. I guess that would be my first memory of wrestling.
How do you get to watching WrestleMania as your first thing? Like, that's an event. Was somebody
Yeah,
else watching it?
I don't know actually kind of how it came to be. I think maybe I was just watching, these clips, and then maybe I saw an ad or something for it. And I was like, told my parents, I was like, oh, this is kind of interesting. I've been watching like a few clips of, I saw John Cena, whoever this guy is. And I'm like, oh, this is kind of cool. And I think they kind of just bought in and were like, okay, let's give it a watch. And yeah, I mean, it was crazy. I remember seeing like Chris Jericho and AJ Styles and like seeing Roman Reigns for the first time. And I was like, wow, like, there's almost 100,000 people in this stadium watching wrestling. And, this is not like phony, or this is not like, some BS a lot of people are saying it is. And I think that's just how I kind of fell in love with it.
Okay, and I'm assuming that it was an immediate thing. Like, right when you saw it, you hit the ground running, you were a fan. Was John Cena your guy, or did you have other people that came into the light as your favorites?
Ooh, I mean, Cena's definitely up there. I feel like Kevin Owens was somebody in that era I watched. So, like, I started watching 2016 is when that Mania would have been. And so I feel like I kind of got into wrestling more the second half of the year. I think I watched WrestleMania, and it kind of like dropped off because I didn't really know that they had weekly shows. So I feel like the summer I kind of got into it more, and like that's when like Finn Balor won the Universal title, and that's when like Kevin Owens had his reign in like the fall. So definitely like Kevin Owens, Sami Zayn, Balor, Seth Rollins, like those guys were close to home for me, for sure.
Was there an opportunity for you to go see like a live event, whether it was independent wrestling or a house show? Like, did you get to experience it live instead of just on the television during this fandom?
Yeah, my parents took me to a couple house shows. So funny enough, my father's like friend, his like daughters were into wrestling, which is kind of funny. And so he had taken his kids to a couple shows, and so my dad was like, "Oh, where is this happening?" And like eventually he found a tour. It was like when WWE did like a house show loop in Toronto, and like I was at the railing for my first ever show. So like
Wow.
I was like right at the entrance, and I'm like, high fiving like the New Day coming out, and like Seth Rollins and like all these guys I see on TV, and I'm like, they're ginormous, like they're massive. And I'm just like, this is wild, like all the lighting and like hearing the ring, and I'm like, this is crazy. And then luckily enough, I got to go back for more, and I went to a couple like Monday Night Raws and SmackDowns, and even like a NXT house show in St. Catharines, which at the time was nice because it was only like a 30-minute drive instead of going an hour to Toronto. So those would be like my first few shows I went to, which was very cool. Definitely a cool experience.
So it might be a little cliche to ask, but at what point in this process did you start to think like, hey, maybe this is something that I would want to look into, maybe head towards as I grow up?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it didn't really come right away, honestly. Like, I was young, and I was like, maybe this is just kind of like a sport you see. I didn't really think too much of it, like of training and whatever else. And I obviously didn't know what the independents were as a kid, so I had no way of realizing that, oh, somebody from my hometown is doing this, right? So it's kind of different for me. I played a ton of sports as a kid, so I was always busy, playing hockey and soccer and whatnot, and busy making friends and those things as well. And I feel like it didn't really hit me until like the sports kind of dropped off in a way. I kind of, lost interest in hockey and didn't really see it turning out the way I thought it would as a kid. And same with soccer and football and all those things. And so like grade 9 is when I kind of started getting to like AEW. And I was like, this reminds me a lot of the style I started watching, with like 205 Live and NXT TakeOver. I was a huge fan of NXT during that period of time when I got into wrestling. And so I was like, oh, like there's a couple people I recognize on this show, and like they would go the distance in their matches. And like everything was awesome. All these crisp moves and things like that. And I remember when they came to Canada for the first time in Toronto, I took my mom and my sister, I dragged them to AEW. And I remember like the card was great and I love seeing everybody, but I remember watching Pac and Orange Cassidy, which was like the main event for that show, and it was for the All Atlantic Championship at the time is what it was called. And I remember them just like going balls to the wall, like all these crazy moves and like just going nuts, and the fans were just losing their minds on everything. And I was just like, this is awesome. And Orange Cassidy won that night, and I was like, wow, like this is crazy. There's like confetti falling. It was awesome. And then I remember looking to my mom after the match, and I was like, can I do this? Like, can I sign up? And she was like, you know what? Sure. Like, let's try to find something.
Yeah. So would this have been in grade 9, you said?
Yeah. First entering high school. Yeah.
I'm guessing you might probably a little young, like a little too soon to start training.
No, actually. So after that show, she said it was fine. So I started looking at like schools because I was like, okay, maybe this is a thing, right? And so I found Hamilton Pro Wrestling, which was like 20 minutes from my house, which was perfect. And I mean, on the website, there was like a picture of this like warehouse, like near the Skyway, and like one like email for a contact, and that was really it. And I was like, okay, I'll send this to my mom, and maybe she can figure it out. I'm too young for this. So luckily enough, she emailed, and he got back to us in like a day, and pretty much like briefed us on everything. And then the next week is when I stepped into the ring, which is a really fast process. But yeah.
How old were you when you did that?
I just turned 15, like literally like 3 days after, probably.
Wow. Okay. So you're 15 years old. I'm assuming that it's probably already an intimidating process going into wrestling school. I'm sure there's other people there that are maybe older, maybe a little bit bigger. You're still finding your way. Like, how did you feel when you started getting in the ring and started doing that bit of training?
Honestly, I think it's kind of opposite to what you're saying right now, surprisingly. As soon as I walked in, I kind of felt like I belonged. Like, as I said, I played on, many sports teams and played with a lot of fun, friends and teammates and coaches and things like that. But I never really felt kind of like I belonged. And I feel like when I walked into the wrestling school for the first time, I was like, I really fit in here. And I mean, I got really lucky because I got to join a kids class. So there was other teenagers that I could kind of relate to and were similar size to me. And I feel like that kind of helped my training out a lot just because we were all kind of so new experience wise. And Rip was super positive. So I'm very thankful to Rip Impact for sure for my early start.
Was there any stark differences that you noticed? Like, you had done team sports before, hockey, soccer, you had said. So it's obviously a big focus on the team dynamic. And of course, there is a lot of cooperation and coordination in wrestling, but it is a lot more on individual shoulders. Did you find that there was any sort of challenges when adjusting your mentality to training for something so individual versus a team activity?
Yeah, like it's obviously so independent and you pretty much have to rely on yourself for a lot of stuff. And I feel like in team sports, I had teammates and I was friends with people, but in wrestling, it was kind of all on me. So I kind of had to figure that out pretty quickly, but I feel like I grasped it pretty quickly. My start in high school, I feel like I was pretty independent anyway. So wrestling, like it was kind of second nature when I was training, I believe. So, yeah.
Did that mean that because you started so early for the training that you had to wait even longer for like getting an actual match? Like, was there an age requirement or a period of time before you could actually start getting booked for shows?
I didn't really talk to Rip too much about that. I just kind of like worried about my training and like hearing feedback from him and other guys who had kind of stopped into the academy. So it would have been 2 years and about like 7 months until I had my first match, because I stepped into the ring in 2022 and I didn't have my first match until July of 2024. So there was a big gap there. I feel like nowadays a lot of people who are training like have their first matches pretty quickly. But I'm honestly grateful for that kind of journey, because I started out in the kids class and eventually I worked my way up to other classes and started training, 3 or 4 times a week. And I met Robbie Hollywood during that period of time. And, he's the same age as me. And we clicked instantly and connected. And, we would text outside of training and be like, oh, what did you think of this drill? And like, we'd talk nonstop wrestling. And every weekend we would go with Rip to like help him set up rings and network and try to meet people and just be, happy-go-lucky kids. I was such a huge fan of wrestling, and like to be able to see as many independent shows as I could and, see all these incredible independent wrestlers, like it was phenomenal. So I'm so thankful for that journey between my, first time training and my first match.
Speaking of the first match, do you remember who it was against, when it was, how it went, maybe some of the feedback you got when you were done?
Oh man, so it was against Robbie Hollywood. We had our debut together, one-on-one, which is crazy. A lot of people debut in battle royals and huge tag team matches or multi-man matches, but we had like a singles in like a pretty decent spot. We were like before intermission, and so I was like, this is wild. We were so excited to hear this together, and we trained so hard up until that point. And then July 2024 is when we had our first match, and there were so many people. We heard so much from like people and wrestlers we met online, but also like people came from different cities to watch us, like different independent wrestlers, which I thought was mind blowing. I'm like, I obviously respect and support these people as much as I can, but for them to like come out of their way to watch my first match, that meant the world to me. I never really had that kind of show of respect before, so that was very cool. And I remember just going out there. I was so nervous, so excited to see what like the future would bring for me in wrestling, and like hitting that curtain and seeing like there's probably almost 400 people there that night, and just crazy, just a crazy energetic fan base. And I had probably like 20 family and friends there, which was awesome. Like they came to support me and had all these like t-shirts they made, and they made like signs with my face on them, and they were just going crazy. So that was very cool. And me and Robbie just had a very fun match. It was probably like 12 to 15 minutes of just nonstop of a showcase, to be honest. Like we were both 17 at the time, so actually we would have been 16 at the time, I believe.
Oh, wow.
I think, which is crazy. Yeah, I don't really know the exact age, but something like that. I remember just getting to the back and seeing all these people that I've trained with, hugging me and getting a standing ovation and things like that. I was so thankful for all that, and just the online support even too was crazy to see, like from fans in the building that night to other wrestlers shouting us out on their stories and stuff like that. Like it was so meaningful, and I've never really kind of had that many emotions before. So it was nuts. Yeah, it was crazy.
Okay, so I am going to ask you about highlights, but I want to talk about a specific match in particular, and it's probably the first time that I remember seeing you perform. It would have been last year on Boxing Day at Brantford Wrestling. If my math is correct, you would have only been 4 or 5 months into the business if you started in July. And I do want to say, if somebody had told me how new you were, I would not have believed them. You had a match against Robbie McAllister, and it just blew my mind how far ahead you were than what I figure somebody at that point in their career should be. But you're also in the ring with a former WWE wrestler who was, if I'm not mistaken, performing before you were even watching. So I want to ask you about that night, because to me, that's got to be such a special moment. You're getting in the ring, and I believe Robbie even got on the mic after the match and in front of a full room talked about how talented and how impressed he was by you. And I will never forget that. As long as I think of Luke Kaiden's career, I think that is going to stand out. Can you talk to me a little bit about that night? All of the feelings that must have been there, but also you guys put on a banger of a match.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. So yeah, honestly, that stretch, like when I debuted to the end of the year, was pretty crazy for me. I got to debut at Northern Crown, which was, in that period of time. But for Boxing Day, I remember finding out through Kill Ricky that I was booked on that show, and I thanked Ricky so much. Like, he's such a giving guy, and for him to be able to put me on that show, even for just seeing me in the ring for literally a minute, that was the whole gimmick of Kill Ricky. And so I remember, like, I think I was sitting down, I don't know, I must have been watching YouTube or something, or watching wrestling probably. And I remember looking at my phone, and I get a notification that Brantford has tagged you in a post or whatever. And I look, and it's Luke Kaiden versus Robbie McAllister on the poster, former WWE superstar. And I'm like, what is happening? Like, I think I nearly fell out of my chair probably. And I remember like running to show my parents this. I'm like, this is so cool. And so many people were like, this is going to be awesome. I'm so proud of you. And it's so funny because he was wrestling before I was even born. Like, to be honest, I had no recollection of Robbie McAllister until that poster popped up. And I instantly went and watched everything I could. I found out about him sitting in the crowd during TNA when he wasn't supposed to or whatever. And a couple matches I saw of his, and I'm like, wow, this guy's, jacked and he's awesome. It's a funny story. So Boxing Day rolls around, and I have family dinner before then. And I was obviously pretty new to wrestling. I probably should have not have gone to my family dinner and probably just gone to the event. But I did go to dinner first, and then I left as soon as I could, and I got to the venue. Luckily, the ring was still being set up, so I got to help a little bit with that. And then I, was super nervous. I was wearing like nice dress clothes, and I was like, hopefully I make a good impression. I don't know what I'm doing. I kind of look like a dummy, but we'll try to make a good impression. And I remember meeting him, and he was just so nice, so giving. Like, we had a pretty short match, but he was very receptive with like the ideas I had. And, obviously for him, he's, been wrestling 20 plus years. So for him to like wrestle a kid on Boxing Day, like, that meant the world to me. Like, he gave his time to be able to put on that match with me. And for a lot of fans to like bring that up to me still, it means the world to me. And I mean, he's probably one of the hardest hitting wrestlers I've been in the ring with. I remember feeling that chop, and I was like, man, like, this is what they do in WWE. And I was like, oh man. But such a fun match. And I mean, afterwards was crazy. Like, when he got on the microphone, I was like, whoa, like, this is not supposed to happen. I'm supposed to go to the back and just be like a stooge kind of thing. And for like the crowd to be on him, but he kind of directed the crowd to me, and he left the ring and he gave me the ring, which is crazy to think about being that early into my career. So I definitely hold that memory with me for sure. And I will for a long time.
Amazing. I'm so glad that I got to be part of that night, even just being in the audience. Now, you had mentioned Robbie Hollywood, and of course, I have to ask about the tag team, because you two are both so incredibly talented for your experience in the industry. How did it come to be that you guys decided that we're going to work together? Because not only are you both phenomenal wrestlers, in my opinion, but you have a phenomenal chemistry. When did you guys start teaming, and how did that idea come up?
I mean, obviously we gained chemistry during training. Like, we would be training 3 or 4 times a week, like I mentioned, and we had our first match together, and that was pretty awesome. After that first match, we decided to send it around to a ton of Ontario wrestlers, and we got so much feedback and so much things we could improve on, and we just kept adding that to our game. And the next HPW show rolled around. Rip was kind of thinking of putting us in a tag, and we were kind of thinking the same thing. And so we're like, you know what, let's try it. Why not? Like, we kind of had a face-to-face singles match, and so it made sense. And we had our first tag team match, and it was so much fun. Like, I love tag team wrestling. I'm a tag team wrestling connoisseur. I love the moves. I love how creative some of the spots can be, and how, some of these indie tag teams that you see today, like Sinner Insane and Fresh Air and ATO, like those were the guys that I watched when I was, building rings and stuff. Like, so to be able to like be kind of in that light, I guess you could say, it was pretty crazy to me. And I wanted to make sure that everything, like from tag moves to gear now, which we have, was on point. So it's been a lot of fun. Generation L.
I got to say that gear is absolutely fire. I love that gear. I saw it the first time. I think the first time I saw it, you guys were at PWO and you were doing a trios match with Jay Blast. But you guys came out with that new gear, and I immediately posted on social media, this gear is fire. So let me ask you, what are some of the other big highlights that you've had in such a young career so far?
Oh man, I mean this past year and like a bit has been absolutely wild. I'm grateful for everything. I post so much on social media about like I get to live this. You know what I mean? Like I get to go to different cities in Ontario, and recently I just got to travel to the States, which is a highlight of mine. So in November, like I got to wrestle for Empire State Wrestling and a last chance battle royal. Me and Jay Blast made the hike up to Buffalo, and we weren't successful, but like we wrestled in front of 500 plus people, which is mind blowing to me. Like that's the biggest crowd I've wrestled in front of so far. So that was crazy. Being able to wrestle on Northern Crown, like that stage, I got to wrestle at Northern Crown this past November, and then I also got to wrestle there for Show 4, I believe it was. And that's when they had the first Canadian WWID on that show. Like, so I was like probably 4 or 5 months into wrestling at that point. And so to be able to be on that stage that early was mind blowing to me. And I'm just so grateful for the people that like put me in those positions. This, 2025, I won my first championship for New School Wrestling. Me and Robbie Hollywood claimed the NSW Tag Team Championships, which was very cool, back in June. So that was an honor, like to, have a championship and to bring it home to my parents and be like, I put all this work in. And even if it's some independent championship, even if it's some tag team championship, like I worked for this, you know what I mean? I put in the effort, I put in the time, and it paid off. So very, very cool.
All right. So moving forward, you got plenty still to do in your career. But what are kind of the most immediate things at the front of your mind that you're like, hey, whether it's singles or tag team, who would you still love to just cross off the wrestling bucket list? Or, what other companies would you like to work for, or destinations to travel to? Like, what do you want to do in the more near future?
I mean, there's a lot of things, and I have a long way to go. I have a long list of things to learn, I'm sure. So there's so much I still have yet to do and accomplish. But immediate things I would like to do, there's one thing that comes to my mind, and it's a particular match. I would love to wrestle. I'd love to tie up with Judas Icarus. I feel like he's been my favorite for a very long time, and I've been wanting that match for so long. And I feel like that would be a fun match to tie up with him. I mean, even if Travis Williams wants to hop in, I can throw in Robbie, and we can get a Generation Now versus Sinner and Saint going. But yeah, I mean, to go back into the States, I think would be cool. There's so much going on there. Von Vertigo's killing it, as you know. Like, he's going to the States, he's going across the pond to the UK, he's Canada's journeyman. So to be able to like kind of follow him would be kind of cool, and it's paid off for him in tenfold. So that would be cool. I do want to go to the UK. That would be very fun. It's a great scene out there. It looks like there's a lot of awesome wrestlers there. But I mean, I think just kind of grinding and chipping away, that's really all I have. Like I have some goals, but I think my thing is just keep grinding, keep showing face, keep at it, keep training and keep working hard. So that's what I've been doing.
Well, opportunity presents itself to those who present themselves to opportunity. Now, don't worry about justifying it or making it realistic, but I have to do the wrestling 101 and ask you, who is the dream opponent? If I could sign a contract and say tomorrow you are wrestling anybody who is lacing up their boots today, who are you getting in the ring with and why?
Man, like when I started watching wrestling, there's guys like Kevin Owens, Johnny Gargano, Andrade, Seth Rollins. Those are my kind of crew. But I feel like more deep down inside, I would like to wrestle All Ego Ethan Page.
Oh wow.
That would be a match that I've wanted. So, a little story time. He used to go to the same high school I attended in Hamilton.
Oh.
And so I kind of connected with him there because some of my teachers knew who he was and they knew that I was a wrestling fan. And we started talking, and that was pretty cool. And then I, saw him in AEW, and then he went to WWE and won the NXT championship and now the North American championship. And I was like, wow, this guy's awesome. He's the best. And he's from my hometown, which is so freaking cool. Like, he's at the top of the game, and he's killing it. And I think that would be a very, very fun match. And yeah, maybe it'll happen at Alpha One someday. You know what?
Have you had a chance to wrestle at Alpha One?
Yes. So in February of 2024, I filled in for the Outer Limits Championship match, and I've been there ever since. So I'm even there at January 18th, whenever this comes out, and I'll be there next year as well. So yeah, very cool.
And that's the beautiful thing about wrestling is you never know, right? So just being there, it could happen, right? Things happen all the time that nobody would have expected ahead of time. So let me ask you, in regards to more just like character work, because you definitely have all of the moves down, but did you always kind of know what sort of image of yourself that you wanted to put forward? Like when somebody saw you at a show for the first time, that they would leave and think, hey, this is, such a nice guy, or did you always want to be a face or a heel? Like, what's the image of Luke Kaiden that you want people to be left with when they leave a show?
Honestly, I feel like there's so many people who have like personas and characters in mind before coming into wrestling, but I really wasn't one of those cases. The wrestling I liked was, the cruiserweight division with like Mustafa Ali and Rich Swann and Cedric Alexander. And obviously, like I mentioned, Kevin Owens. And those guys would, they'd go out there and they'd give it everything they have every single match. And there wasn't really too much character tied to them, to be honest, if you look. And so that's kind of what I always wanted to do, is, leave everything out in the ring and go 110% every time, every show, every match, and just kind of get respected in that way. But the Futurist thing has kind of been building. It's something that when I first started, like, a lot of people were like, oh, you and Robbie are the future of wrestling. You guys are the future of Ontario. Like, when some of these guys move on to WWE or wherever they go, like, you guys are going to be looked at as the future of this place. And I kept hearing future and future and future. And I was like, maybe I could turn this into something, and it might just be like a little moniker. And I was like, maybe the Futurist will work. And that's been working for a little bit. And that's something I kind of believe in. And that's like always looking towards the future, never settling for the present, never being content. And that's something that I always strive for. I always look to the future. I always think about upcoming matches and upcoming bookings and make sure I'm prepared for all those. And I think that's something I want to keep working on. It's something I want to keep continuing to build, whether that's with promos and things like that. But I definitely want to keep the evolution going of the Futurist character.
Okay, so I might be guilty of that as well. I might have posted a couple of times about you guys being the future of Ontario independent wrestling. Does that add a lot of pressure, or is that just like extra motivation for you?
Ooh, it's kind of both. Like, when I had my first match, there was obviously a lot of pressure there, but I think as I keep wrestling, it turns into motivation. Every time I step foot in the ring, I know that I belong there. I know every time I'm against a huge opponent or somebody that's contracted or was contracted or was on TV or somebody who's huge on the indies, I know that the promoter kind of thought of me in this light. So I got to go out there and kill it. I got to show the fans that I belong, and I got to show whoever I'm across the ring with that I belong in the ring with them. Obviously I'm a giddy little kid on the inside, living this dream, but sometimes I'm kind of like, I'm here. I believe I can do this. So that's kind of my mindset. It's kind of turned into motivation over time, I think.
Well, so the last thing I like to ask everybody is just for a piece of advice. If there's another person who's listening to this, who's maybe on the fence about getting into wrestling, hypothetically, if you could go back and talk to a young version of yourself, not that you aren't already young as it is, but a younger version of yourself when you were getting into the business, what's maybe the most important piece of advice that you would have benefited from hearing earlier in your career?
I've had a pretty lucky upbringing into wrestling. Rip has taken very good care of me, and he's made sure that I'm, protected, and he's made sure that all my bookings are safe and nothing like falls through or anything. So I'm very thankful for him, and like my past year of wrestling, like he, would help me with bookings and stuff like that. I guess like when looking back, I would say, and some advice I'd give myself is like, I would probably say, don't get too caught up in some of the things you hear. I feel like I'd be too hard on myself after some matches and things like that. But in the long run, like I'm 18, I have, the rest of my career to go, right? Like I'm just getting started. And I always think, to always listen to these, more experienced guys that I'm wrestling or on shows with. I always try to get feedback as much as I can. Whether that's somebody who, wasn't at the show or didn't even know about it, I still try to send matches out and still try to get as much feedback. So I guess the one thing I'd say to my younger self would be to listen and just, keep on going, be positive.
That's amazing. Before we sign out, can you just let people know once again who you are and where they can drop you a follow on social media?
So I'm the Futurist Luke Kaiden. You can find me on Instagram at Luke Kaiden _. You can find me on Twitter as the Luke Kaiden. I try to, keep those updated as much as possible with upcoming bookings and highlights and some promos and match announcements and things like that. So please go drop them a follow. And I try to also differentiate the content between Instagram and X or Twitter, whatever you want to call it.
It's Twitter to me.
Yeah, Twitter to you. Yeah.
Thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate the time.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you for tuning in to Independent Wrestling Profiles. Please help out the show if you can with a like, subscription, or review. We'll see you next time.
This program is a proud part of the Swear to Pod Network.